1,000 people here just to see you. How does that feel?
No, it's pretty awkward. A bit nervous. I was a little bit late. So
Yeah.
my wife's dress didn't rock up from dry cleaning, so it's a bit awkward.
We couldn't find you either. What have you been up to? You've been getting headlocked out there, have you?
Yeah, I have. I've just been up in the room, just waiting for the dress to rock up. So yeah,
How's
finally got here, which is good.
How's it been since kicking 8 goals to go out? I mean, what an afternoon that was. That was just unbelievable.
Yeah. It was. No, look, it's quite surreal. I'm still trying to catch myself a bit. It's I feel like I'm on holidays. I'm still playing. So you kind of reflect back and people talk about it, but it's a pretty cool way to go out. But the boys looked after me that day. They hit me up a fair bit.
What have you done since?
Not much.
No?
Not much. No.
Relaxing?
I tried to start running about 2 weeks in, and my knee was pretty sore. And I found that there's a lot less motivation when you don't get paid to be fit. So, so I found it quite hard to go to the gym and keep on top of it. So.
Yeah, I don't think I haven't been to a gym since I finished playing. So you'll know what that looks like. Although when you start sort of seeing the fat grow, it's when you sort of start to think, I better do something, start doing some exercise.
Yeah.
How is the body? You okay?
The knee's actually been all right. So the first probably 2 weeks, it was pretty sore. Kind of after that last game, I drove home thinking, I could probably play another year here. And then I woke up the next day with a bit of a headache, probably from the celebrations, but also my knee was complete. I couldn't walk. So, it took a couple of weeks for the knee to kind of settle down. And like I said, I tried to start running. It was a bit sore, but it's been well over 8 weeks now. And I've been able to do a couple of runs, and the knee in the day-to-day life has been pretty good.
So let's go back to the start. I believe you were born in Melbourne. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Spent a little bit of time in Canberra.
Yep.
Eventually settled in Northampton. And Mum and Dad, very talented basketballers, right?
Yeah, so that's kind of where it all started. Mum and Dad met at the OES. They were there in Canberra. Obviously got together, and Mum played for the Canberra Capitals and Dad played for the Canberra Cannons. So Mum was obviously pregnant with me and obviously had to stop playing. In the meantime, Dad had kind of had a few years with Canberra, had got asked to go to St Kilda in the NBL in Melbourne. And of course he wanted his son to be probably born in Victoria rather than the ACT. So shipped us back for a year. We were there, and I was there for a few months. Obviously lived with Grandma, and obviously Mum had me, and then we went back to Canberra where Dad finished off his career. So my 2 sisters were born in Canberra, and we had about 4 or 5 years there before we ended up in Townsville, then back over into WA where Mum was obviously a WA girl, and we ended up here, and then eventually ended up in Horrocks Beach near Northampton, where this is where it all started.
And you played state basketball as an under 16, I believe, is that right?
No, this is everyone says like I had a choice between basketball and football. It was never. I don't know where it started. I was the tallest in basketball. My mates will attest to this. I could never really play, so I was no good. I enjoyed playing with my mates, but football was probably the one thing that I really latched onto. But I was never any good at basketball.
Did you actually barrack for Collingwood? Is this true?
Yes, I was a Collingwood supporter.
Why? How? Just tell me how this happened.
I know. So my old man was Collingwood supporter. My grandma was a Collingwood supporter, which is why he was. And obviously being Victorian, so I don't really have a choice. I started following Collingwood. My favourite player at the time, my first jumper was number 17 with Northampton. So Scotty Burns was actually my favourite player because he wore number 17, and he ended up coaching us towards the middle part of my career, which was quite bizarre. So I used to have grandma sent me a signed photo of Burnsy, so I used to have that up in my room, and I didn't tell Burnsy that, but we were playing Brisbane one day where my old man lives, and he was walking along the path with him and just said, "Oh, do you know that Josh has got a photo of you hanging up in his cupboard?" And so it's quite a little bit embarrassing, but because I was a Collingwood supporter, and most of my big, I suppose, events in my career have been against Collingwood. My first game with Carlton was against Collingwood. Had 80,000 people there, and we won the grand final against Collingwood. So I've had a couple of big events against Collingwood.
Oh. That would have hurt a bit then, growing up and beating your old side that you grew up barracking for. What about back in town though? How did things kick off? Like, coaches, junior coaches, and obviously footy or sport is the part of most regional towns, right?
Yeah, so I didn't really know much about football. I've got this vivid memory of my Uncle Jeff being in Perth at our house and watching the football. I think Sydney West Coast were playing at the time, and I had no idea what footy was, so I would have been about 6 or 7 at the time, so I've just been purely basketball. But then once I got up to Northampton, I started school probably mid-year, and my mates who were just sitting down at that table over there, who I went to school with, asked me to play in the kind of sports carnival, which was the school carnival. So I remember, so Langers, who's down there now at the front of his house, and his mum Donna's here as well tonight. So we were practicing handballing, we were practicing kicking, we were going through drills with his older brother and Simo, my other mate, and yeah, that's pretty much where footy started. We played a carnival that kind of period, and then the next year, as I started to get into school, obviously, I played under 10s, and that's where all footy started. So it was my mates who got me into footy.
So underage state footy, end up at East Fremantle, you play half a dozen games, you kick half a dozen goals, I believe, a goal a game, and then of course you get drafted to Carlton. How did that period of your life, reflecting back, change the way that you thought about the game?
Yeah, I didn't really, I suppose, get in. I loved playing footy with my mates, and we would go down the park in Northampton, down near the top pub, and the toilet block, which obviously had a bit of a gap between the boys and girls. That was the goals, and we played there, and that was all I loved doing with my mates. And it wasn't until I was around 16 that footy started to take off a bit. Cameron Napton, actually, who was part of the state selecting squad, was up in Geraldton. So I didn't actually go down for the development squads in January to play. So a few of my mates went, but I wanted to be up at Horrocks with my mates and enjoy the holidays. So Mum tried to push me to go, but I never went. And I missed out on being a part of, I suppose, those state selection type setups. And it wasn't until mid-year or start of the year where Cameron Napton was up on a trip with the Waffle Commission and asked, who's that kid playing? And so he picked me out and asked me to come down. I was very reluctant to go down because I had my spring dance on. So I was about to miss my spring dance, but Mum obviously pushed me to go and play and said, look, if you go down and play, I'll drive you back. You get back to the after party. So we had an agreement there. And that was the first, and they wanted me to come down and train and play during the next couple of weeks, and I was a bit hesitant to come, but Mum pushed me to come. She drove me down constantly every week with training, and I was lucky enough to make that state squad, and that's where it pushed through, obviously, to be able to come down with East Fremantle, and obviously play a year there under Andrew Lockyer, and yeah, was lucky enough to obviously get drafted to Carlton in the end, which was a bit of a bizarre feeling because we had people talk about, you're going to get drafted and everything like that. I didn't think that I would ever, but then it got to the back end of the year and a lot of clubs are talking, and so I kind of had an idea that I might. I didn't really care where I went. So we were watching the draft pretty much on a projector like this, dial-up connection, so it was pretty slow. We had pick 1, 2 and 3 came through, and obviously there was a bit of a, I suppose, lag in the connection, so we kind of sat there talking. We were eating our, I suppose, our breakfast because it was 7 o'clock in the morning, and then yeah, I got a phone call, which kind of got screened, and the phone call went again, and obviously phone rang again. I answered. It was Dennis Pagan saying congratulations, you'll be drafted to Carlton. So, and then obviously picks forward at 20 came down, and my name was there. So it was pretty cool to, I suppose, do it with my family and my friends who were there at the time. And I was on a plane 2 o'clock the next day, going to Melbourne to play with Carlton.
So here you are, a bloke who's reluctant to come from Northampton to Perth to play footy.
Yep.
And now you find yourself in Melbourne. What was that like?
It was a big jump. It was a big jump going from Northampton to Perth, and then obviously going from Perth to Melbourne, you know. So I suppose a footy club where even playing AFL, you know, I was used to kind of Northampton where you had a couple of people with their cars around the ground, beeping horns and, you know, socks on the windscreen wipers when someone kicked a goal, to a few thousand at, I suppose, Shark Park. And then, yeah, my first game was 84,000 people against Collingwood at the MCG. So it was a big couple of jumps.
So you're at Carlton. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, you played 20 odd games. and then Chris Judd decides that he wants to leave West Coast. He actually was interviewing football clubs. I've never seen it up to this point ever.
Amazing.
A player going around and interviewing clubs. Now, I think you might have been overseas though, weren't you? Or
no, I was
were you on holiday somewhere?
I was over in Brisbane.
Right.
I've seen the old man, and there was a lot of talk in the papers. Juddy was starting to talk to clubs, and then I think on about the Thursday before trade week, he'd nominated Carlton. So a lot of names getting thrown up. My name, Fev, Lance Whitnell, Ryan Houlihan. There was so many names getting thrown up. But obviously my connection being back from WA was a big one. And we went, I was coming back, I was to Lucky Bay with one of my mates, Langers, who's here tonight. And it was, obviously Lucky Bay's got no power, no reception. So he had a satellite phone, which you could stand on top of the shack and you'd hear it ping off if there was a message. So my manager said, just in case, make sure you let me know, because I think the club might want to talk to you, And I was like, so we're on a fishing trip, standing up every couple of hours, waiting for the phone to ping off. Obviously, nothing happened until Sunday morning, and my manager said, or Wayne Loxley, so he said, Woosh wants to talk to you. So I had to come back down to Geraldton. I was in my sister's room at Mum's house. Woosh made the call, said, I want you to come down on Tuesday. And I was pretty reluctant. I told him, no, I want to stay at Carlton, because I had 2 years on my contract. So I said, I want to stay at Carlton. I want to be one club player. Don't worry about booking a flight. I'm not coming down. And it was probably the last time I said no to John Worsfold. So, But he got me down on the Tuesday, and I went through the club. And by the end of the week, it was, in terms of pros and cons, there was a lot of reasons to come back. Being close to the family, being close to my friends. West Coast were winning at the time. Carlton, I just won a wooden spoon at Carlton. So. Yeah. And then we won a wooden spoon 2 years later, so I thought it was a jinx, so it didn't really work out that well, but it was all good.
Yeah, so your early memories of West Coast, because, you really hit your own personal straps in about 2011, where you jumped out and kicked 59 goals. You were all of a sudden in a 40-man All-Australian squad, and you'd arrived.
I finally kicked Lecker out of the goal square. I think that's the only reason why I was able to get him out, but... Yeah, look, our early years, obviously it was going through a bit of a culture kind of change. There was new leadership. Glassy took over as captain. We were young players coming through, and it was a bit of a time where a lot of off-field stuff was probably taking over rather than the football stuff. But Woosh had a clear vision of where we wanted to get to. And it was going to take time, and we needed the process in place to get there, which, to his credit at times, and I'll be honest, through the first early years, I was like, Woosh has gone crazy. We're never going to be back up top. But we did. 2011, we had a breakout year, and we made a prelim. It was a year that, for me, I was quite lucky to, I suppose, kick Lecker out for one, and actually get some marks inside 50 and be able to kick some goals. But as a team and a group, we were able to kind of push through, which is really exciting. And so I never played finals before. And for me, coming from Carlton, we actually beat Carlton in the second semi to push through to a prelim against Geelong. Geelong obviously beat us and went on to the grand final. But it was the one point, I suppose, for myself where I'd come to a club and we'd actually push through further than what Carlton did, because at the time we'd gone backwards and Juddy had taken Carlton to finals. So I was thinking, I better pull my finger out here.
So you played in that preliminary final, then you win your wooden spoon, which you spoke about. That was 2013.
2010.
And then the West Coast Eagles make a change, and Adam Simpson comes to the club.
Yep.
And you make a grand final. Probably a lot thought that there was no chance of you making that grand final, but you did.
Yeah, it was another year where we didn't make finals the year before, and then we kicked into gear, and we had some really good wins, had really good consistency. Simo was really clear on the path on what we needed to do, and we had a great bunch of blokes, and we pushed through to, obviously finishing top two, and obviously a grand final in 2015, which didn't end up the way we'd want it, especially going into your first grand final with, that's your dream to be able to play in one. And it didn't go our way. Hawthorn were a terrific side. They've been in the last 4 grand finals and obviously won the last 2. So they really took it up to us. And it's something that I suppose we'll always sit there and go, we could have done a bit more. But in saying that, I think we learned a fair bit, which pushed us onto 18, which got the win.
Is it true that Simo wanted to get rid of the goal kicking award? Is that true?
So our first, so Whoosh obviously left in 2013, and 2014 we had our best and fairest in November. So we come back pre-season and our best and fairest hadn't happened, and we'd had our first leadership group meeting with Simo. Simo wanted everyone to shave our beards, so all the guys with the beards said, Adam Selwood actually rang everyone and said, hey, just letting you know, kind of vibe Victoria is that West Coast are ahead of himself, and the beard's just no good, you need to shave them. Simo wants them gone because he thinks that you're all ahead of yourself. It's like, fucking hell. So me and Masto Scully were the only ones really with beards, and so we were all talking for weeks, like, what do we do? Anyway, we got to a point where it's like, all right, well, we've got training on Monday. We've actually, we've got to come to a decision. What are we doing? I was like, oh, look, I don't think we're ahead of ourselves. I'm just going to keep mine. And then, oh, well, we all might get... Anyway, those two shaved their beards. So I was the left one, left out to dry. So we had our first leadership group meeting, and obviously one of the comments from Simo was like, oh, yep, it's glad that everyone's kept their beards straight away. And then he proceeded on to go, okay, I think that it's best because we've started pre-season and we're going into our best and fairest that no one drinks. I was like, okay. What do you mean no one's having a beer at our best and fairest? It's a bit off. And then proceeded to go, oh, and I think the goal kicking award, I think it's a little bit selfish. We want to be a team player. We don't want to. So I don't reckon we have the goal kicking award. I was like, it's the only award I can win. So it was a little bit of a bad start, bit of a bad first impression, but we worked through that, and he kept the goal kicking award, which thank you. And we never looked back from that.
So were you like your mentor? Because I know that you and Peter Sumich have a very close relationship. Did you have it built into your contract where you just didn't handball and that you kicked a goal because you were getting bonuses built into your contract? Have you got a certain number?
The boys will say that. I know how to handball. You check my stats. There's stats sheets down there. It says I handball.
Summa never used to handball, mate. Running into an open goal, he definitely had it built into his contract, I can tell you that.
Well, he only took marks inside 30, so he never had to.
You had a pretty good relationship, you two, though, didn't you?
Yeah, we did.
He was pretty honest, wasn't he?
He was honest. He was black and white. He really shaped and helped me with my career. He knew that, I suppose, I had work rate in the game, but I just wasn't getting enough, I suppose, opportunity. And he really tailored kind of my movements around the ground to be able to be in a good position to have those opportunities to, one, make an impact or have a shot on goal, but then also when I wasn't having an impact on the game, how to have another influence around with the team. And yeah, I can't thank him enough for what he did, because it really shaped, I suppose, me as a person and a player to be able to get to where I am.
How good was that grand final glory at 2018 premiership? I mean, I know there was a couple of teammates who you would have loved to have out there on the day, but there's nothing better, is there?
It was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool feeling. I think the raw emotion. We've looked at a lot of grand finals. Even our 15 one where Hawthorn kind of spanked us. They kind of knew they were going to win the game by three-quarter time. So for players out there smiling and letting go of that emotion, for us on that day, it was 2 minutes to go. Dommy got us in front, and we still didn't know right down to that last 10 seconds. So in terms of emotion that came out, once that siren went, I'll never forget that. And having, I suppose, my good mate Lecker spear tackle me to the ground, it was something that, I'll never forget.
COVID and the challenges and the change in the last couple of years. I mean, we've come out the other side, but how tough was that with family?
It was tough for not only our industry, but all industries around Australia and the world. For us, we had to lock down for 8 weeks, as everyone did, and then we had to obviously ship off to Queensland. Decisions getting made on whether the family comes across or whether they stay here. Obviously, WA had less restrictions than a lot of the other states, so for Lauren and the kids to stay here, still go to school and still be able to do, I suppose, life, it was a bit of a no-brainer for them to stay. But we obviously away for a period of time where we were umming-ahhing whether they did come. But the restrictions we had in Queensland playing, and we couldn't go to playgrounds and couldn't even surf or play golf. We were staying at a golf resort, we couldn't even play golf. So it was obviously a bit weird, but from our end, we were quite lucky to be able to have our season go through, still be a part of a group training and playing together. still be able to play a few games and do what we love doing. So there was a lot of people in Australia who couldn't do what they love doing. So we were quite lucky in a sense, as much as you can sit there and go, it was hard.
When did you finally make the call that you were going to pull the pin? Was it at the start of the year? Was it midway through? When did you finally work it out?
It's probably a few times. It's probably started in 2019. So you might have wrote an article about me saying that he should retire, so I probably started thinking about it then. But no, it was...
I don't think I did. I think I was pumping you up, don't worry.
No, look, last year, I hurt my knee in the Melbourne game, which was later in the year, and I kind of knew I had to have surgery and a bit of meniscus, and I played the week after. It was a little bit sore, and I ended up breaking or compound fractured the finger. So I went out, and then I knew that it was going to be another, it's probably my fourth surgery on my knee. So I knew it was going to take a little bit longer to recover, and there could be a bit of pain moving forward with what I need to do. But that's why I took a bit of time to kind of think about whether I wanted to re-sign. So I was kind of unerring then. But once we got committed, I thought, yeah, I'll be fine. I said to Simo, and we came in pre-season. Simo was like, I want a manager. You need to, train less. You need to do this. We're going to get you through X amount of games. And I was like, nah, this could be my last year. I want to train and play every single game. And he ummed it. He was like, no. And I had the final, I pulled the trump card and said, look, I'm doing everything. And it wasn't the best decision. So I should have listened to Simo. I started getting through pre-season, fair bit of pain. It was no good. I couldn't actually walk and play and train, and I wasn't in training. And so I knew we kind of had to set a bit of a plan. I tried to play the first 8 games, struggled a bit towards the back end. And then once it got to a point, it was actually... We were going into the Melbourne game, we were training at Optus. I was doing my normal walk jog around, and I couldn't walk jog. And I was in a bit of pain walking through, and I kept looking up the stands and going like, oh fuck, this is it, I'm done. I'd walk again, and then I went back in the docks, got my knee drained to see if I could keep going. It was still sore, and I was like, that's it, I'm done. So I went in and saw Simo, I said I can't play. Probably have to have a couple of weeks off, and we kind of reset after that. And then we had a couple of games before the bye, and that's when we kind of thought of the plan to, I suppose, finish with, the Adelaide game being the last home game. So
now, your last game, I rock up to the ground, you're driving the ute in, and I see you before the game, and I reveal to you that I've brought my clippers in, and we're going to pump up the foundation. This is before the game. This is a true story.
Yes.
Under the docks. I couldn't do it. After you kicked 8 goals and it went out like that, it just wasn't the right moment. But tonight is the right moment, because I know now that you are heading back to the Midwest, and you've set up the foundation. What about the future and what that looks like?
So it's a bit of a passion project where we're going to help disadvantaged youth up in regional areas. So being from the country, you obviously understand a little bit about, I suppose, what resources you can kind of access, and a little bit from sporting background where you have to come to metro area to be able to pursue a career in sport. But it's not all about sport. My foundation is just going to be about helping, I suppose, bridge that gap with a lot of resources that the city kids or a lot of city metro people get that the regional kids miss out on. So I don't want to have a restriction on location, financial, whatever their environment as at home is, for the resources that they can access. So if we can help bridge that gap between, obviously metro area and regional kids, we'll start in the Midwest. I'd love to be able to pick it up one day and drop it all over WA, but we'll see how we go.
Maybe you could set up, as part of that, a goal-kicking run-up school, because
maybe
that changed quite dramatically. How did you get out? How did you get out of doing that, by the way?
There was I had a lot of Auskick dads tell me that I need to stop it because my kid's falling over constantly. So it was tough. But no, look, I always had a bit of a skip, and I used to kick balls into a bin, and I knew I wouldn't get in the bin, but I'd almost get it near, and so I kind of brought it in. Then it obviously got a bit out of control. It lasted a few years. My percentage was actually really good, so it was all about my last 3 steps, and then Justin Longmuir kind of sat with me and said, hey mate, you need to, work on it, we either go fully with it or we completely get rid of it. And it took about a year and a half because it was obviously a bad habit. So we got rid of it. Well, we slowed it down a bit. I've still got a bit of a skip, but it's always been about my last 3 steps.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, mate. I think most people would agree the technique was pretty damn good most of the time, mate, because you were nailing them from everywhere. Last one, mate, because we're going over time and we've got other things that we've got to get to, but the friendships along the way. I mean, playing premierships, but the people that you meet, you've had pretty much a lifetime at the football club. You would have made, I'm sure, many dear friends that'll be with you for a long time yet.
Yeah, mate, it's the one thing about sport, whether you're juniors or whether you're at the elite level, it brings people together and you're able to make a lot of, I suppose, lifelong friends from the connections and the memories you make. And I've made a lot over my career, and I've been quite lucky with the people that I've been able to play football with. The quality, the talent, just the men that I've been able to play with is unbelievable. And, there's guys here, so Luke Shuey and, Sam Butler, Mark LaCroix will be getting up later, I think. I think Jeremy McGovern's out there. These guys who I will cherish their friendship forever because of the memories we've had, the things we've gone through, the ups and downs. And those guys have made me a better person over my career, which I can't thank them enough.
Well done, mate. Terrific. Josh Kennedy, everyone.